Hey Dan, how are you?
Hey Rico, I'm great. How are you today?
Good, man. Can you hear me okay, or should I put earbuds in, you think?
You sound great. If you can
Okay.
hear me okay,
Yeah, cool.
look at this wall you've created. It's beautiful.
So basically, I was, through the world of virtual meetings, I realized I had a really drab wall behind me. This used to be my son's room when he was a kid. It's actually maize and blue. The other wall is blue because we're Michigan fans here. And
hmm
so he took his stuff down, and I was just looking at a wall, and I said, well, what the heck can I put up there that's kind of temporary because we're going to end up changing this room around. And I said, perfect. So ironically, you said something about wearing jerseys. This jersey usually is up on the wall. And maybe I should tell a story about the jersey a little bit. So as you notice, it says Grambling, and this is actually, embroidered in there. It's not like
Yeah.
a screen print. And this guy says, "Hey, I have a jersey for you." And I've known him ever since I first got into hockey long ago, and I'll tell the story in a minute. But this is after I won the award, and I was, "Are you going to be at the Firebirds game tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." And so he says, "I got something for you." He brings me this jersey, and I was like, "Where did that come from?" Of course, I thanked him. I said, "Where'd that come from?" And he says, "Oh, my wife. She collects jerseys, and she found this one. Man, I thought of you. Like, I didn't know anybody that played for the team, so I just thought of giving it to you." And I said, "Well, absolutely, man. Thank you so much." I was so impressed. I was like, "Grambling had a hockey team? Get the hell out of here." So
Yeah.
I started looking up Grambling's hockey team, and there's no such thing as Grambling hockey team. I don't know where this jersey came from. I ranked in the correct colors, color scheme. So somebody must have just said, "Hey, I want me a Grambling hockey jersey." So I wear it with pride.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
noticed I love that story too. And that's usually what's so great about hockey jerseys is it might be a piece of polyester, but there's usually a really great story behind it.
Yeah,
Or
for sure.
it's a symbol in some way for some moment in the game or a memory or some way to bring people together. I noticed from the ones on your wall, the Flint Fire one was given to your firehouse by the Red Wings, along with a donation check
Yeah.
to your foundation, right?
Yeah. So you've done your homework, man. Good job. Yeah. So like you said, every one of those jerseys are symbolic for me up there. And that one was given to me by a host of Red Wings. There's four of them there. There's Dylan Larkin, the captain, Anthony Mantha, Anthony Anthonaccio, who's now, I think he's playing in LA, maybe. Anyways, and Tyler Bertuzzi. So what was cool? That was just that moment. So like if you go back in time, I always wanted to be a firefighter. But I was in hockey before I became a firefighter. I just started like a few years before I became a firefighter, but it was part of me already. I was already refereeing and stuff. And I remember in my interviews, I put that down in my resume that I was an official with USA Hockey, and that was impressive to them. Oh, like that was something, but it was, even though I was doing little kids. And anyways, I never imagined, it was my furthest from my imagination to have four Detroit Red Wings playing ball hockey on the floor of the station at the fire station I went to when I was 7 years old, man. And I remember as we were playing the game, I just stopped and just was looking around and watching. Like, these guys weren't just, hey, they were playing, man. It was serious, man. You know what I mean? Not really, but they were competitive. Everyone in the guys that chose to play, for firefighters, that chose to play, they were having the time of their life. And I just stopped. How did I get here, man? And so, as you know, they gave the jersey at first I was going to display it at the fire department, but I talked to some of my colleagues who told me, "Rico, you earned this opportunity. It's your jersey. No one's going to appreciate it as much as you. Even if it's sat here for 20, 30 years, nobody would know why we have a jersey from the Detroit Red Wings." So I took that as I better own it. So I do own it, and I'm so proud of it.
That's great.
It's both of them with for me is what it does.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, is that the one you wore during the ceremonial puck drop?
So the one above it is
the one above it. Yeah.
Puck drop. Yeah. And that has my name on it. And like I said, for me, I turned the one around with Flint Fire on it because that's where the intersection happens. And like the Willie O'Ree Award is a perfect example. I had a big support system within the hockey community, but I don't think I could have won that award without the support of my entire community from teaching fire safety for well over 20 years of my career. Not only kids, but adults and everyone in between, and many different, been a part of many different fundraisers, community events. I mean, not just be a part of them, but organizing them. So it all came to play out when I, had to have some support in a way of online voting to win the award. And the local media just went nuts over it, and it just spread like wildfire. And I was just so lucky. I mean, like the Flint Firebirds, they're like a huge supporter. I mean, it was on their billboard outside the arena. So it's on one of our major interstates that comes by the arena. So anybody that drove through said, what about Rico? Vote for Rico. And it's me with a picture of me and Willie O'Ree. It was pretty cool, man. I mean, the first time I drove by, I almost wrecked. I was like, holy when I see it, I said, man, you got to be kidding me. So I had to drive back around and get a picture with it. It was that special. I couldn't believe that the moment was happening. And during the voting process, I could just feel, you could just feel that it was special, man. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not going to say I knew I was going to win because there's no way of knowing that. But I could just sense that if I was not going to win, I was still going to have, told our story to so many people. And that's what was most important.
Yes, agreed. And I think that's part of your acceptance speech. I noticed you said any one of us nominees could be up here because it's true. There's no way that award is really there to recognize, in my opinion, the one who does a better job than anyone else, as much as just we need to recognize someone and some cause. But what we're really trying to do here is raise awareness over all of the ways that hockey is trying to combat whatever it is. It could be something mental illness related, DEI related. It could be any one of these causes that are going out there. And hockey's great. It's a great vehicle for change. And I'm very grateful that you were the recipient, though, because it allowed me to learn more about you, what you're doing. And just wanted to say thank you so much for what you've chosen to do with your time post-retirement, but even going back to the 80s with your involvement in hockey. It's meant a lot to the community. So on behalf of a white guy from Canada, I just want to say thank you so much for everything you're doing.
You're you know what? You're welcome. My mom used to tell me that when someone, says something nice, you just say you're welcome, because the bottom line is something about certain people that come along in this world that get an opportunity to really take all the finer things in life, even work through the struggles that make up a person, and then get opportunities to kind of be a beacon of hope. And I didn't never set out for that, but trust me, that was not when I first got in the sport. I knew I was different from the moment I got in the sport, right? For my color. I was an athletic trainer, a student trainer. So it was a running joke. It was the 80s that I was the only black guy in the rink anywhere we went. And so I knew what I was getting myself into, so to speak, in that regard. But there was something about the sport that was offering me this level of, just looking at the players, the commitment that they have to skill, the teamwork that has to happen. Now, I've watched some great hockey players, but when they try to play it alone, they're not worth the crap, man. And so the teamwork is really in a whole different divine way. You can see it in soccer some, but the sense that the speed of the game, with that level of teamwork, it just hooked me in right away. And then I seen the camaraderie of the players, I'd been a part of other teams because I was an athletic trainer, but hockey players seem to be different. And so I took that as that was the reason I wanted to get in the sport. I didn't have any sense of being able to help change the sport in any way, shape, or form. So I can't tell you, sit back and say, in 80 whatever year I started in this. I say that because I'm getting older. When I started this journey with hockey, I just wanted to have fun like everyone else. And what I found out, though, it wasn't long before I found out that the fun was limited for people of color, and especially during my era. And so for many years, I was the only person of color in any rink that I was in, especially when I was refereeing games. In fact, playing too. I mean, all my hockey buddies are white guys. They were in my age group. Obviously, we're playing in our age groups. But the point is that I made some errors, my own self, that I had to learn from. In order to feel like I could fit in, I had to normalize making fun of being the only black player, or being black alone, and just being the only black player, but being black. And I would joke right along with them, and so that I would ease tension in the locker room when I came in the locker room, because I could tell they were like, who's this black guy in here? And what does he want? Can he play? All of a sudden, all these variables that I know is going on, I could see and feel it.
Right.
So, I would start to make fun of the fact that I was the only black guy. And little did I know that once I become a little bit more mature, how much damage I had done, not only to myself, but to normalizing bigotry in my circles, in my hockey circles. So it took a lot of work to recognize those things. And one of the things I wanted to change was, as I call it now, I don't know that I call it this back then, but change the narrative, who the people are that I was seeing at the rink. So as I refereed 10, 12 years, I was the only person of color. To this day, 34 years into the game of refereeing, it's a game within itself. I've never refereed with a person of color.
Wow.
And I live in Michigan, Flint, Michigan. For those of the folks that are paying attention to this podcast, it's in the center of the state of Michigan. So it's a extremely diverse community now. In fact, it's probably tilted more an impoverished community more than a blue collar or working class community. So with that said, but along the way, it wasn't always like that. It was a working class community where you had the automobile factories and whatnot that made up our town. And so anyways, what I'm trying to say is that when I looked across the landscape of the kids who played, they were all suburban kids that were affluent, and they looked the same, dressed the same. Their parents were the same, mostly just thinking that the world was only theirs. By that, I mean, they'd be willing to shout, and I know sports brings us out in every sport, but shout some of the most rude things you can imagine during a 10-year-old's hockey game. Yeah. I heard them, things like, why don't you go ref basketball where you belong? Coon, what? At the time, I was like 20-something when these things were being said. The first time I ever heard a racial taunt, or slur, rather, aimed at me outside of any aimed at me in an angry way or hateful way was my first year as a referee, my first 2 months as a referee, Dan.
That's so nuts.
I wanted to quit. I wanted to leave hockey that day. And luckily I had a senior partner who threw the guy out of the game. He was a coach, his assistant coach, called me over, I blew the call, and then he starts ranting at me, and I'm like, I don't know. He's asking me why I didn't make the call. I'm like, I don't know. And then he says, well, and then throws the N-bomb at me and says he's going to kick my ass in the parking lot. And I'm like, wow. And I was 17, man. I was like, well, he's a grown man. I don't even know what to do with myself at that moment. Do I want to fight him? No, I can't fight a grown man. I'm in stripes. I'm on skates. All these things are wrong. I mean, where's my boys at? All of a sudden, all these things because I'm a kid, man. Oh, but the most important thing, I felt alienated and alone. Like so many people that have been in that position, whether you were black or just felt different based on whatever the reason is. And so little did I know that that was going to be the platform that I could use moving forward to tell my story. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had some real life occurrences where my partners will come up and remind me, you know, when I'm reffing a game, remind me before the opening face-off that the puck goes down. It doesn't go up like jump ball. And I'd laugh about it. And then to the point where I realized something was happening. I wasn't getting opportunities to go to the camps so I can become a better official. So I wouldn't be this clumsy skating black referee out here that everybody can make fun of. I didn't realize it until all of a sudden I seen people are coming in behind me that came in with similar skill, but now they're going to camps and they're bettering themselves. Now they're doing playoff games. And while I'm done right at the end of the season. After doing it 13, 14 years. And so I was like, what's happening here? And I had a defining moment then, and I don't tell the story all the time, but it was very defining. I was refereeing a game, and it's hard to describe these towns without you knowing the town specifically. So we'll just say 2 hockey teams. I referee and my bread and butter is a linesman for high school hockey here in the state of Michigan. And I was working a game in a town just south of here, and one of the teams' hometown is known for its influence of the Ku Klux Klan back in the 70s.
Okay.
So the Michigan Grand Wizard is out of this particular town at one point. So it's known if you're black, don't go to that town, right? Because who knows how they're going to treat you. And they're definitely not going to treat you well. They're not going to make you feel welcome. Now, I want you to consider that this is probably back in the early 2000s when this game was occurring.
Okay.
So I want to take you back a little bit. This wasn't last month, right? So anyways, I knew coming into the locker room that I was working with this game and this team and another team. And I thought to myself, wow, isn't this ironic that I'm going to work this game? And I was making kind of light of the situation. I said, I can't wait till national anthem until I pull my lid off. And I'm going to stand there just like this, proud as it can be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Them dudes from Hollow aren't going to know what to think. I put the lid back on my head after that process happened, and nothing in particular happened in the game, but it was really a high-strung game. I mean, these two teams were going at it. And so towards the end of the game, things are pretty ramped up. I dropped the puck. I dropped back into my position, and it happened to be I was at this particular team I'm referring to, their city, over my left shoulder, and I'm watching the game, and I got 2 players, one right here I can see and one behind him. And the one that I can see, he's yelling at my partner, you got to get in the game, you got to open your eyes. And he's calling him some shit, you know, and I'm like, hey. Because I'm working as a liney. I'm not going to make a call. And it's a tough game anyways. And I said, hey, you got to calm down. You got to get some class, man. And the kid behind him says, hey, you got to go back to the country you came from. And I was like, whoa, what did you just say to me, man? And again, I was a bit younger, so I turned around to hell with the game all of a sudden, man. I just looked, what did you just say to me? And he realized that I caught him. Like he must have thought I didn't understand what he was saying, you know. And he looked dumbfounded. I was talking to the coach. Well, ironically, the whistle blew. And I said, and the assistant coach says, what's going on? I said, hey, I don't know what you think, but I know what he meant when he said, I need to go back to the country I came from. That's what your player just said to me. He said, oh, man, he didn't mean nothing by it. Now I'm pissed. I'm totally out, ready to run out of there, right? But I got to be cool. I'm a professional. My partners came over with the bands, and we handled it. They handled it, rather. They threw him out. And then in the locker room, my partners called our scheduler and talked with them, our supervisor. Well, this was an epitaph. How do you write that? And that's what I want to talk about as we go on, about how my role, how it's evolved and what it means, why a role like mine's important. But going back to this moment, it was an epitaph, and he wanted to figure out how do we write it up? And next thing you know, my partner's looking dumbfounded. He's like, okay, I'll tell him. And he hangs up the phone. And then I said, what's up? I'm taking my skates off. And he says, he told me that Rico needs to get a sense of humor. And I was like, whoa, that was the moment it blew my mind. And to tell you the truth, Dan, that was a moment when I realized all the things that I'd done wrong by setting up, it's normalizing people around me to be bigots. And it was a come to Jesus meeting for me personally. Certainly I was that, and I didn't know what I was going to do first. I was fuming, but just because I was incensed that the one person I needed to support me in the situation really turned an eye on it, which a lot of officials are blamed for doing in situations where race is involved, that they turn the other direction because it's really heavy to deal with. So
yeah, it's a difficult topic to talk about. So thank you for sharing that story. I mean, the difficulty in hearing that story for me too is that I know you had another moment earlier in your refereeing career within those first few months. You kind of referenced it, and your senior partner at the time told you there are days you can grow up and there are days you can stay young. And moving forward, it seems like you certainly applied that principle instead of even in the heat of the moment, you knew to address the situation, tell the superior, in that case, the player's coach, and you were handling it. And there's failure number one of the system. And then you go back into the locker room, it's being somewhat formally reported, and there's failure number two in the system. And that's a systemic problem that you can't help but wonder, how did we get here, and what's my role in it, and what can I do from here moving forward? And
without question,
I love the way that you summarize that. So it is a good place for us to kind of talk about where you're trying to appropriate your position now. And for those that are listening, Rico now holds the position of Director of Cultural Diversity and Inclusion with the Ontario Hockey League. So I know we can talk about your role with the Flint Intercity Hockey Program. We can also talk about this. I'm sure the message is similar in both cases and what you're putting in towards those programs. So I'll leave it to you as to what you'd like to talk about from here and where you're moving in your next chapter of your journey with this. Because I know it's not over. I mean, you did a charity game just a few years ago with some firefighters, and they're giving you slurs in that game. Right. So this needs to keep moving forward. I'm interested where you're taking it.
So, and I appreciate that, to recognize, even for me, it's difficult as time has evolved. I will say that some things have changed. You're starting to see some diversity in many levels of hockey. Certainly, you can't ask for diversity necessarily if you're in rural communities or where there just isn't diversity based on where a person lives. But what I'm trying to do now is, with my new role, and maybe I should talk about how it came about, because I think it's really important. So I'm fortunate enough to have won the National Hockey League's Willie O'Ree Award, as we mentioned, and I didn't realize that was going to be the turning point for Rico. Like I could step away from being firefighter Phillips. Like being a firefighter for the city of Flint was my entire identity. Other than I had this side identity with hockey, I sure did. I mean, I was being known for it much more towards the end of my career, but internally, it was an identity that I've had since I was a little boy. So it wasn't something that I took very lightly, looking at retirement. But the role I had and the position that I was in, I knew that the time was coming. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. So I won the award. And when I came home and realized the well of support I had for what I just accomplished for our community, I realized I could be something different than firefighter Phillips. So I decided to retire. Didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I was just hoping that nothing taken from anybody that works at certain box stores, but I didn't want to work at a box store or, all of a sudden just fade out and just do stuff. I was be a retiree, but I still didn't know what that was. And I got some opportunities to speak publicly. And I spoke to the Ontario Hockey League's business operations staff members from all 20 franchises in the fall of 2019. It was at their Vision 2020 conference. That's what it was called. And I spoke to them about my journey, of course, but also my mindset about how it's so important for each organization to understand their role within a community. Like for me,
yes,
I talk about the fact that when I look at Flint Firebirds and I talk to those players, I say on the front of your jersey, it says Flint first. When we talk about it, it says Flint first. That means you represent me and our community no matter what happens. All right. It's going to, whether it's success or failures, whether it's struggles or triumphs. Right. So what I want you as a player to do is not go to our suburban area where they have you living and billeting, which I understand it's safer there. That way you don't have to worry about things. You got families that are hockey minded, hockey oriented, but don't stop there. Come inside our community, learn what our community is. So it's the same in London or any other town. And so the role that I was serving at that conference is to say, there's ways to look to the under-indexed, non-traditional hockey fans that are out there. And I want to help do that if I ever can. You should do it. This is why it's important. It's bigger than just your marketing model. Your marketing model will be, because like I expressed to them, the OHL is great hockey for a family. It is so great. I don't even think the fans half understand what they're seeing in front of them, potential NHL stars, until they become stars and go, oh my gosh, like for us, Ty Delando's playing now. He's getting play time, and he's a big part of our building of it's not a rebuild, but building of the Flint Firebirds. So anyways, fast forward, I'm doing all these opportunities. As you talked about I went to Ottawa Senators invited me there. I mean, that's incredible. For me to go 9 hours to the east, that's how I looked at it. Like I'm 9 hours away from home in a place I never even imagined going to. And they're treating me as if I won like I'm an Ottawa, a person from Ottawa, the way they during the game, welcome to the game, Willie O'Ree Award. I mean, it was awesome, man. I was in a box and we brought a team of kids from Flint that were 4 or 5 of the kids were.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. They were from our program, and we brought their whole team with them. That way they could play in a tournament. And that was the idea behind bringing them. And they had a suite for us, and it was filled with food and beverages, and the kids were treated awesome. And like I said, they stopped during the game. That Ottawa jersey, that's right behind me. Yeah, it's signed, a team signed jersey. And that's the reason I'm telling you all this stuff is because I was on this roll and I wasn't sure where it was going to take me. And then the pandemic hit, and bam, what am I going to do now? I was like, and I was off the edge. And so there was nothing I could do. I just kind of sat quiet. And then George Floyd was killed. And like so many people across North America, I don't care what color you are, but especially Black people, you had this sense of, I have to do more than just say enough's enough and raise my fist and put a hashtag out. I have to turn words to action, because this is not, we have to change the narrative. And so to be honest with you, I reached out to Willie O'Ree himself. I'm fortunate I was able to give him a call, and we spoke, and I was telling him about my struggles. Like I felt so lost in what was happening in the world right at that moment. And he said, Rico, your voice is in hockey, and that's where it needs to be heard. You better speak up. And so I don't know, it just inspired me to contact David Branch, the OHL commissioner, and he contacted me and we spoke. He said, this is so ironic. We were just talking about, we need to come up with a better way, a plan that we can get someone to help us with. And then you emailed me, said it was divine intervention. That kid is what he calls me. And so it turned into a beautiful opportunity for me. It was a creation of the position of Director of Cultural Diversity and Inclusion. And so now what my role is to help. So the way I view it, Dan, is this.
Okay.
As you know, the sport of hockey is predominantly white, predominantly affluent, and it has to do with the price or the cost, a lot. It's probably the biggest barrier that anybody can take, You
can't deny it. It's absolutely a factor in our sport.
Yeah. And that, I think that divides a lot. And that is not to say that people of color or Black people are poor so they can't afford the sport. what it boils down to in a lot of cases is minority families take a look at their family budget and they have a child that's trying to do something fun and extracurricular. It's called hockey, especially if we're talking about Canada. It's almost the norm. So this child is having fun, excelling, doing really good in single A year, now double A years, going good. Now all of a sudden it's like, hey, got this great elite camp coming up. And if you go to that camp, more chance, then you're going to get a chance to go to a AAA tryout. Well, Mom, can I go? Well, no, you're lucky you could play hockey, all right, with our budget, right? On the other side, and I'm not saying I'll say this happens on a lot of occasions. A white family has the same situation, and the reality of the fact that there is a chance they can actually dream of it as compared to a black family being able to dream of it legitimately happen for that 1%, that they're willing to put their credit card up no matter what it takes. I'll get another credit card. So their child gets his chances. Next thing you know, their kid's got a fast tracked up the route. And this kid over here is going, well, I still love hockey, and that's okay. But the problem is that's where there's a divide right there. All right. So that's why there's only 18 black players in the National Hockey League. That's why there's very few BIPOC players in general. It's because of what sacrifices have to be made in order to excel in the sport and to be part of the who you know in the sport. And so one of the things that I've looked at from more than one way is not just OHL, but I'm also on the advisory committee advisory board, for the Hockey Diversity Alliance. Yep. And so with that being said, we noticed that was a gap. These guys know, they've been there. And so when I first got to the OHL, I decided, and of course, David Branch endorsed and said, absolutely, this is the route we should take. I interviewed 7 recent players of color from the OHL, so I can get their perspective of their experience from a cultural standpoint. And just say, what was it like in the O? I went all the way back to their childhood playing, when they first started, who they played for, where they played. I want to know about their town they grew up in a little bit, so I kind of got a gauge. Did they grow up in suburban, rural, inner city kind of situations? And it ran the gamut, to be honest with you, of the players that we asked. And one thing a few things that came out that I think is very important that I've been working on, all of them, with the exception of one, said that the first time that they'd heard a racial taunt or slur was between the ages of 8 and 11, and it was at an ice rink. And it was not within their neighborhoods, not at their homes, not within any other peer group, but ice hockey. And it varied from their own teammates to opposing teammates, or, it could have been adults. There was one that had adult situations. So that told me that when we work on diversity, equity, and inclusion at the 16 to 20-year-old age, when they're in the Ontario Hockey League, we already have some players that think that that's the way that it goes, right? So because the standard has not been set, when kids are coming through and parents are coming through the doors for the first time, and every single year all the way through, that standard isn't maintained and is brought in and is re-emphasized, and everyone's kept to a standard on it. I mean, in other words, if you violate it, we're not just going to suspend you. That's not what we're after. We're after helping to educate you to understand why what you said or did is outside the lines, right? So this is what I found out, and I've also tried to apply it in my own state for the same effect. But I've been able to speak to the North Ontario Hockey Association, Waterloo Minor Hockey Association, Kitchener Minor Hockey Association. I'm trying to think if there's other groups that I've spoke to in the Ontario, in Ontario in minor league hockey. And the idea is to start to express to them that, here's an example. There's a rural team in somewhere in Ontario. I don't know any town, so I can't call any out, but you know them in your minds. And there's no people of color that live anywhere in the town. So you got a pretty good little program going. We play hockey with this other little neighboring town that's really similar. And then So we don't really worry or talk about, BIPOC people or the standard that's met when it comes to how we don't say certain things or we're allowed to say certain things, however you want to coin it, that we don't, there's a standard with hate speech. And so then all of a sudden at 10 years old, they go down and they play a team in Toronto where it's a diverse tournament. And all of a sudden something goes wrong.
I hear you.
Yeah. And so then the problem with it isn't just that, this is a teaching moment for this kid. It is. It really is. And they'll have to learn at that moment. The problem is there's a victim involved. And that's when I tell my stories, I want you to understand that I felt victimized. I was a victim. And because you feel alienated, alone, and you either want to fight or you want to go cower away. And it's hard to figure out a balance on that. Mm-hmm. And so me recognizing these things, I'm trying to express it as we come along. And now I'm trying to push that conversation to our players within the Ontario Hockey League. So like we've had some courageous conversations with a few of the teams where we'd sit down and I would tell my story and then create dialogue so that players felt welcome and open to talk about things that bother them. Like how come in certain hip hop music, they use the N-word, but we're not allowed to use it. I mean, I get asked a question like that, and that's a hot topic question.
Right.
And you want me to answer it? I can answer it right now, Dan, if you want.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I definitely love to hear like how you go about answering those questions. Like the PE teacher would need to explain to kids sex ed for the first time. It's like, all right, how do I handle this one?
Yeah, exactly. Only because while I was ready to open up dialogue, I guess I didn't think about where the questions could send me. And I to be honest with you, I do know that that's an issue, but I didn't think about how I would answer that. If someone were to ask me, what the questions, what's the appropriate answer? So I'll be honest with you, I answered it, and then I did research after I answered it. And by that, I meant I asked other Black people, how would you answer it? And I had a couple people that helped me. Two people that I asked didn't really have a good answer for it. Like, I don't know what I would have said. And I had one person who was a former firefighter. He's a retired firefighter as well, a colleague. And he's a Black man. The other two guys were Black men. One was a Black man that I know from Minnesota, who's originally from Canada. He's a hockey guy. The other man was my barber, who I've known over 30 years. I go see him every 2 weeks. Doesn't do bad. He blends in my right. Every 2 weeks I see him. I mean, he went to my retirement party. That's how close we are.
Plus, he's got probably a lot of intimate secrets on you over the years. That's a guy you want to keep close to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Watch my journey. That's what's cool about him. He's known me since before I was a firefighter. So he's cut my hair. He cut my hair to give me my interview. So I tell him, without you, I might not have gotten it, man.
There you go.
Anyways, so the way I answered the question, the other person I want to point out who he was because it's important to know. So he's a Black man that was, like I said, a colleague of mine, and he's from Mississippi. He grew up, born and raised in Mississippi, came up to Michigan when he was probably somewhere around 25 or so. He's 50. So anyways, we combined our answer together. Here's the way I'm going to try to give a brief history lesson. I know I talk a lot, man, but I want to give you a brief lesson. So basically, in history, Black people were brought to North America, but United States in particular, as slaves, as we all know. And they're brought here by Europeans, and the Latin term for Black is Negro, as many people know. So they're actually called Negros. And so instead of giving Black people names because they were just basically used as slaves, they didn't want to have to name them all. They just called them Negros or Negroes, and Negro turned to Negro, right? And so as language evolved throughout the 16, 17, now closer to 1800s, the Negro turned to the term nigger. And I hate to use that term. I know it makes people feel uncomfortable, but that's the actual truth. That was an uncomfortable term then, and it still is to this day. And so that term was used to describe everyone instead of giving them a name, And so it was like, it was a damning, oppressive word. It really hurt people, Black people. And so as time went on, I wanted to push you forward to because it did not go away, even as Black people were free from slavery. It did not go away. It was used for the same damning way. And so lo and behold, the 1960s come along, and the civil rights movement started, was turned to the Civil Rights Act. And for the first time, Black people in U.S. in particular had a chance to be free for real, like real citizens, could vote and had a say-so, could hold office, and all these things that they were held back from and oppressed from. So as that movement turned into the situation, especially when you look at Martin Luther King's assassination, that caused this rage. And so this rage turned to people saying, well, you're no longer going to call us this term anymore. And because Black people have been called it for so long, that they began to say, well, they got used to calling each other that. And then they said, well, that's our term of endearment. Now, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you believe it or not, or believe that's the best way or not, that's basically what happened. So as time went on and evolved, what you get is the 80s, where you got comedians using it every day. In the 70s, I can go back to then, you started to hear it in sitcoms, but you only heard Black people saying in sitcoms. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And so then the 80s came in and started to become more normalized as a term, especially as rap music took hold. And then when rap music turned to hip hop music, that's when all of a sudden we had these different effects of the music, like from different spaces within North America. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
So then that brought in the word to get normalized with the term that you'll hear. If you listen to a term in the music, it's not the same term that was used many years ago, if that makes sense. So what I tell the young people is this: what is your agenda? And that's where we collided, my colleague and I. What is your agenda? What reason outside of this song? I mean, yeah, Black people are giving you this opportunity to use the word because they're expressing themselves. But outside of that music and that song, what is your agenda? What reason would you have to use it? It is not in your culture. It isn't something, it's only a demeaning word if it's used in your culture. So why use it just because we should be able to use whatever word we want to? The F word is a word that we have out there. Should we use that in front of our grandmother? Right? So think of your grandmother when you think of using that word, maybe, and you won't use it. I mean, that's basically what I came up at. And that's where what my role has become, is this opportunity to change language. I didn't know that's what it was going to be, but it's changing language. What we say and why we say it matters. And that while we say freedom of speech, that only really matters if we're talking against our government. It does not mean you have the right to say whatever you want to say to me and not think that's not going to affect me in a way, and I'm not going to lash out. You know what I mean?
Good point. Yeah. And I like the way that you're phrasing your role, because it's not easy and it's a new one for you too. So I'm sure you're still working on your elevator speech there, but I can tell from the way that you speak that you're very affected by quotes or things that have been passed on to you over time. And it seems like, one that you've used before that I think speaks to this situation, well, two maybe, is seek to understand as aggressively as you seek to be understood.
Absolutely.
And another one is be wise about your smarts. And so I'm curious, it sounds like you've had significant influence from people, either like a senior official during a game when you're 17, or you're looking for some guidance and you give Willie O'Ree a call, and he helps you find your voice within a movement that you want to be a part of. So what's the method that someone like myself, or within the communities that you're going to, you want to see them take that approach as well?
Well, you hit it right on the head. Those two quotes that I used publicly, it certainly is mind stimulating. And that's what I try to do is be this. I don't want to be so grandiose, so say an inspiration, but I really want to be an example of a freer way of thinking, I guess. And it was probably, I had some stumbles within my own career in the fire department where I felt betrayed by colleagues after I put my heart and soul into that fire department and what I did for not only our community, but our fire department. And so it was a defining moment for me when I felt like, including our city administration kind of left me out to dry as if I was suddenly just a number. And when I recognized that, I was having some internal battles, like I was being vengeful and hateful. I wasn't trusting of people for the first time in my life. And it really was a couple of years where I was struggling to be happy. And my wife will tell you that seemingly I was always on edge and angry with my kids. And I recognized that she hit it right on the head. Something's not right. And it was my mindset. And I had to recognize, and thank God I had hockey, because hockey was my avenue to get away from the firefighting scene so aggressively to where it was my everything. I was having to redefine myself as being more than one-dimensional. And even though I was multidimensional as a firefighter, I wasn't multidimensional as a person, really. Even though I had hockey with me, I had to really figure it out. And so that's when I started the Inner City Youth Hockey Program, 2010. It was that's what started that movement for me, like that movement for me. Like, I'm going to make an impact a different way. I can do things different. And so when I use those quotes as like as a guiding lights, I looked at people. So I started listening to reggae music, right? Not because of ganja, but because of the mindset that was behind the music, right? And because there's just a different way of looking at peace and unity and one love, as I say, it was real cliche, but that's what I started doing. I literally changed I stopped listening. I know people are probably surprised, maybe people aren't because of my vernacular, but I stopped listening to hip hop as much. I was listening to heavy metal at one point in my life. And what I was trying to do was find an inner peace. And so when I was able to do that and get the same rewards through hockey that I was getting as a firefighter by helping these kids learn our sport, and it wasn't about any award, that's for sure. It was these rewards that I was getting, man, working with kids and showing them that there's something else out there that you can be a part of. There's a new experience for you. That's really what it's been about.
It certainly, to me, seems like this award has been a call to action. Like it's kind of more like, okay, it's a recognition I'm doing the right things, but I'm not nearly done yet. And I need to figure out where I'm going to be in this. And I think one example I really want to touch on, because I'm very proud of, I think, the stance that is going about this. And it's a little bit of an awkward situation to talk about just because I know of your affiliations with the NHL, but the Hockey Diversity Alliance as well is something you're a part of. And they've recently chose to change the way that their partnership is viewed between the NHL and the HDA. I'd like to think it's because they'd like to recognize that, hey, there's multiple ways to go about influencing change in the DEI. There's multiple conversations that need to be taking place. The NHL can do their thing. The HDA can do their thing. It's going towards a common goal, but one's from a certain perspective. One's from maybe the NHL could be more fan driven. The HDA is more player driven. Right. I bring that up because I want to recognize that it's okay that the partnership went away, because it doesn't mean that they're not working towards making change, and both in a positive way. I'd like to see them get together again. But I do want to just point that out. And I'd like you to talk about that if you'd like to as well.
Yeah, I think it's something to talk about. And I appreciate you noting that without the NHL, I don't have the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award. And those same people that provide that award provide the DEI for the NHL. So I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me, that's for sure. And I've been very clear with them. When I was asked to be a part of the advisory board, that was under the assumption that we would be working at the NHL at that point anyways. But when it came down to the nuts and bolts, I think from my perspective, it is best that we're separate, because the NHL is doing an excellent job at what they are doing for what the NHL's best interest.
Okay.
Is it the best interest of the players and the evolution of BIPOC players into the league? Apparently not, by what we see. When we talk about Willie O'Ree going back to 1958, being the first Black in the NHL, and we fast forward, there's only 18 in 2021 that are actually Black hockey players. And so that's not far enough. And right. Even when we talk about the Cultural Diversity Task Force, that started in 1998. So let's take it from that point. And that's not to discredit them, because again, that's the model of the Flint Inner City Youth Hockey program. Totally.
Like they're they're like, hey, but we can send O'Ree your way, and you're like, hell yeah, let's get him. So,
are you kidding me? Dude, that was like golden. So
totally.
So again, that is a very important role that they're providing. And I think for the fans, it is important that they see that. But the players are missing this avenue that I spoke about earlier. And I think what I see happening is the HDA filling in those gaps.
Okay.
So eventually they will merge. They'll marriage again. I think what was going on is there needed to be maybe a little bit more in the way of organization with the HDA for the NHL and vice versa. The HDA is looking at the NHL, saying, hey, we got it going on. And it just decided to go this way. And I think now what you'll see in the next short period of time, like within this week, you'll see an announcement that the HDA is actually going to start to turn those words into action. And I'm excited for it. And I can't tell it to you until it's announced, but so like my role is grassroots programming.
Yes.
So I'm taking the players' ideas who are playing and doing what they're doing in this world right now and bringing it down to the grassroots level so that we can make these effective change. So like for Rico Phillips from Flint, Michigan, with this little inner city program, to be able to express and expand horizons across North America it's beyond a dream for me personally. I mean, I never even dreamed of being able to take my show on the road like this. And still, I got my show here in Flint. So
yeah,
a lot of work now, but I love it.
And I appreciate you adapting to these changing times too, because I think it's great. The grassroots comment was great because I love how you're recognizing, like, you know what? If my goal here is to introduce more of my inner city community to the sport of hockey, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the ice if that's going to become more of a difficulty for us moving forward. So your program is also branching out into providing floor hockey, ball hockey, whatever you want to call it, opportunities. That's also important because we know that funding is getting cut from just the general physical education part of a curriculum in school. So this might be like, I remember growing up and everyone in my class being like, oh, this is finally hockey. I'm like, yeah, this is what I've been playing like my whole life. And, but if you take that away, then no one ever gets to know hockey, ever gets a stick in their hand ever. And so I'm glad that you're recognizing that this is not like an ice hockey thing, just as the HDA doesn't have to be with the NHL, but I love that they are working together. I love the culture right now that's taking place. I love reading that. I think it was either yesterday or this morning, Toronto Maple Leafs are now the second official partner with the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association.
Yes, I've seen that too.
And I'm having conversations with other people in the blind hockey community about trying to build partnerships and affiliations between professional NHL clubs like the Vancouver Eclipse, the Denver Eclipse and the Colorado Avalanche. And why doesn't that partnership exist for all clubs for blind hockey all over? Just like, why isn't there more women hockey partnerships like the PHPWA? you see where I'm going with this and stuff like
exactly
this. So I'm glad to hear that this is happening. And
well, I can tell you this, Dan, that it is happening, and it's even expanding my horizons.
That's good.
I've had to learn a whole different genre of people, the LGBTQ plus community, and recognizing my own biases was incredibly important. Though I think what's so important about being able to do that is say that I'm a human too, just like you, and I don't expect you to be, flawless and know all this stuff, especially anybody. I don't care who you are. But what's been great about it is realizing there's some great people that they're all about the exact same thing that I'm about. You know what I mean? Just wanting to go play hockey and have a good time. It's the greatest sport in the world, man. And it has a lot to do with all this cool skills we have. But going back what you said about the floor hockey real briefly.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say is real important that I had to note is that because hockey is so far removed from our community and many communities like ours, is that I had to bring hockey to them. And it still hasn't even been successful just yet. I'm still in the works. But I'm working with community residential buildings where there's lower income people and say, we want your kids to be a part of our floor hockey program. And then we'll bridge you over to our on ice program. And if you got the right structure, go on to an actual team. If not, no big deal. You can go back and play floor hockey all year round. That's going to be a year-round thing because floor hockey is easy. You know what I mean? In the sense of equipment and organizing it and stuff. So there's a lot going on, and I'm looking around. Sportsnet just put out a great video overnight that spoke to, it was their Black History moment. But what it spoke to is that the change is occurring, and that it isn't. I want to say this too. Here's one thing that I made very clear about inclusion to white, middle-aged or older men in particular, because I can only imagine they feel like, they're coming from every angle. Everybody's out to get what I've got, whatever that is. I don't even know what that is, but here's the way I look at it. We're not asking, or BIPOC people are not asking to push you out of the way. Get out of our way. We're coming. It's our turn. It's not that. What it is, hey, we see you eating at that table. What are you eating? Scoot over so we can eat with you. And, come over to our table and we'll show you what we eat too. Let's all eat together. Stop eating at that table and looking down your face and say, oh, they're not eating what we're eating. No, we got we got the best. Let's share our ideas, and we're going to be much, much stronger for it, man. If we can do this in hockey, we can do it in our society.
Totally. And you know what? The food at my table is just as good as the food at your table. You just need to try it. You just need to get and just to keep the metaphor going, for some people, it's an acquired taste. Sometimes they need a little bit of time to get used to this. And I think that's important too, and I'm glad you
said that is very important to know.
I know we're at the hour. Do you have more time? I don't want to.
Oh yeah, I have more time. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to get your opinion on was, now after saying everything that we just said about being diverse and inclusive, are you familiar with the team Next Gen that took place in a hockey tournament in Boston over the summer?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm gonna let our listeners know what I'm talking about, and then I would like to have your opinion on that. So basically, what happened was USA Hockey got involved with putting together a team that was out of the eastern seaboard of the United States to compete in a hockey tournament that was going to be held. And they took it as an opportunity to showcase the ability of people of color, that they were really good at hockey. And not only did they do that, they went 4-0 in the tournament and won the tournament. And I was reading a lot of what it meant to the players to have other teammates, not just a line mate, but a whole team of people of the same or similar background as you, both racially and economically. And so I think it's important to recognize that there are reasons why all Black or all minority teams should and can exist within the larger picture of becoming diversity, equitable, and inclusive. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. As that team showcase, as you said, that all any player wants is an opportunity to prove themselves, and the opportunities are so limited in the minority world right now, in the world of ice hockey, and I think it has a lot to do with people above being concerned for some reason. I don't know why they wouldn't want the best product on the ice, because that's really what matters. But to see it showcased, not only did it do something for that team, but it did something for the Black community. Like, I don't think many in the Black community had ever seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
An all Black team. And for me personally, as being a person of color, in my entire hockey fan days, I always look for the player of color, right? And I root for him just because there's so few, and I don't care what team he's on. I've always rooted for him. Whether he's against. Sometimes when he gets, I get a little. I was on Duclair's tail the other day for scoring this awesome assist on the Red Wings. But anyways, but I still was rooting for him, and I still do to this day. So to be able to root for an entire team was a special moment, including the coaching staff, and it proved that things can change and should change. Should there be all Black hockey teams? Absolutely. If the dynamics are there and they're competitive, because no one wants to put an all Black hockey team out to be walked all over, because that's the opposite of the effect that you want, right? You want to show that we're competitive, and that's not to diminish anybody's idea of what a good hockey team or a bad hockey team is. But when you get on these national levels, and you're showcasing, it is important to bring out the best of the best, and to note that there's that many that are that good shows the progress that has been made. And I think that's the point of your question. Note the progress that has been made, and you have to say it's been at the grassroots level. They can't get there without starting one day. Will we see ultimate inclusion? That's what I think we're going to witness in the short term, and what we hope to see. Whether it be Black general managers, whether it be obviously Black coaches and Black equipment managers and trainers. I say Black, but I mean people of color, all races in these key positions. And you're starting to see it happening, and we'll see how well, leaders adapt to that. Put it that way.
I appreciate you noting that, because it's something that I've been very impressed with over the last year. I don't know, maybe a little, I want to make sure that the people and the leagues and the organizations appointing these positions are very interested in doing this from like a true passionate level, rather than trying to address it more at a cultural, like
performative.
Yes, exactly. Level.
And that's what I was concerned with my role was going to be. And it has been everything but that. And to be honest with you, I received calls from some influential Black people in hockey that said, "Hey, be forewarned." And at first I was kind of like, "What? Be forewarned?" But I understood. It just took me a little bit to understand what they were talking about. And I see what you're saying. We don't want to put people of color in places just because of people of color. We want to put people of color in places because they deserve to be there, and because they deserve the opportunity. And that's what they were missing before.
I think what I'm trying to say too is that I think it's important to put those people of color and people of minority and women and in those positions, because they have so much to offer in terms of value beyond what even someone of a typical white background could understand. I understand
exactly what you're saying.
And I love that people like Blake Bolden, for example, who, first pro Black woman hockey player, but is also involved with the LA Kings. But I also love that it doesn't have to be someone who I would consider like a superstar, also now starting to feel like they're empowered to make a change. And I don't mean this as a slight to his talents, but I just mean this as highlighting a person I'm really proud of right now, Jalen Smerrick, who
Yes.
I'm sure you know from being from. I love how he is already, and for those unfamiliar, Jalen Smerrick is a prospect player who's also been playing pro now at the AHL and ECH level, which is got to be challenging all in itself right now with COVID times. But he's also using his time and his platform in hockey, giving back to his community right now, not waiting until later. And I love that is a thing that I see more with people now than in the past.
Yeah, Jalen's a perfect example of that. I'm so proud of him to know him personally, because those things about him that I didn't realize until they were kind of exposed, like his lunch program that he has in the summer, where anybody listen or pay attention to this podcast, listen to us. He makes bologna sandwiches by hand and goes to where homeless live, or where there groups of them, and he's known as the hockey man. And when he opens up his trunk, he feeds these people legitimate food, and this guy isn't in some big contract. He's an entry-level contract player at one time he's doing that. I don't know what he signed recently, or if he's re-signed with Tucson. I know he's getting some PT. I was hoping to catch the game today because it's free on AHL. But anyways, he is a perfect example of humility that comes with people of color in a lot of cases, because they do know the struggles. Like if you look at Jalen Smerrick and his struggles just to make it to where he's from East Detroit. He's not from, when I first met him, I'm like, oh man, I couldn't wait to meet him. I seen that he was traded into Flint and he's from Detroit. I said, you gotta be kidding me. So I called the president of the Firebirds. I said, hey, I'd like to meet this kid. He said, he's coming to Flint for the first time today. Can you be here at 3:00? And I said, absolutely. So there I am, I'm in uniform. Jalen Smerrick's there, and we meet each other. The owner of the team's there, and the media. And his first official picture with the Firebirds, he's standing in the middle of us with the Firebirds black backdrop. I'm on one side of him in my uniform, because the president's like, hey, I want you in the picture. I was like, what? Okay. So I'm in the picture, and then the owner, who looks like, I hope he laughed, but I said, his haircut reminds you of Donald Trump, so I'll put it that way. On the other side of him, and Shana's looking like, what the hell? I can tell you, said, what the hell is this? My first day in the rink, and who are these guys?
Yeah.
Obviously, he knew who the owner was, but he's probably thinking, who's this guy? But I forged an incredible relationship with him. And when I got to know him, I said, well, where are you from, Detroit? And I'm thinking a suburb. He says, from East Detroit. I said, east side of Detroit? He said, I went to Martin Luther King High School. I said, bro, no kid. I want to know his story. Now he fascinated me. Not because, but he's an anomaly, of course, but how did you make it?
Right. Yeah. It's like, this is what I'm trying to do. Yes. How did you do it? What was the code?
Right. Exactly. So that we can help other kids get there. Right.
Sure.
He became, for me, we helped each other. So he started coming and doing promotions with me for the inner city program, whether it be come out on the ice and help us when he could, of course, because their schedules. But he went to a couple of schools, and I love telling the story. So he's 18 at the time, and you can tell he never really worked with kids, but I say, hey, come and meet me at the school. He said, no problem, I'll be there. So I've been working with kids well over 20 years in fire safety. So I know I'm working with third graders in this classroom. I'm like, hey, everybody, I'm all wound up, and I have my uniform shirt on from the fire department. I said, when I'm not in this uniform, I love wearing this one. And I put on probably that Flint.
Oh, cool.
Right? So I'm trying to talk about what's special about this, and that's about the long sleeves, and talk about, well, this is my buddy, Jalen Smerrick from the Flint Firebirds. He's number 5, a defenseman. Hey, can you say hi to boys and girls? Hi. And I'm like, oh boy. So I'm trying to hype up, and I keep him going. I said something else. I said, how long you been playing hockey? And he says, since I was 3. Like, come on, man.
So far he's the stereotypical hockey player interviewer.
Yes, exactly. He was. He certainly was, man. And so we went afterwards. I say, hey, man, I'll bring it down some if you bring it up some.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, all right. And so we met in the middle a little bit. But before it was over, if you were to look him up, you'd see a piece done by Box 2 Detroit, and he's in the classroom reading to the kids, and he had come a long way within a year to when he signed with the Arizona. So, and then he continues, and he'll tell you that people like myself and Jason McCrimmon from Detroit, who runs the Detroit Ice Dreams program, which is a hockey is for everyone program. Mm-hmm. We're people that he looks up to and says he wants to be like. So how honored am I to hear a young man say that?
And he's a very deserving captain of the team as well. And I feel like that does something when you give someone that platform. It just like your award, it validates, and it's also a call to action, right? Yeah. And they can give that captaincy to other people that will validate and call to action whatever they're passionate about. I'm just glad that Jason decided to take his passions and apply it to an area that, or Jalen, and apply it to an area that I was really passionate about, because I'm a huge fan of what he's doing right now too, you. And so I'm just very grateful for all of this time together. And I want to keep asking you kind of like what you'd like to see as some maybe short-term versus like longer-term goals here, or maybe some challenges that you faced being appointed your role, starting to go on tour, and then it kind of been taken away from you. And then also, who knows when the OHL season's starting up.
Right.
So in the time that we have left, I feel like it's really important for us to make sure that people understand that there's ways for us to get involved. And then there's as much or as little as we want to do, all of it can make a difference. So is there some low-hanging fruit and some bigger picture things that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. So low-hanging is getting everyone, the players and staff members, on the same page when it comes to what the standard is, what the policies are. But beyond that, let's open up the dialogue for maybe the first time for some of them ever. And what it's going to help create is a more inviting environment for everyone. So as they start to move forward, they'll start to think differently is the idea behind it. And like you said, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think my first goal right now is to kind of make myself known and what I believe my role is for the OHL. And that is to bring us all together when it comes to DEI in particular. And also, I think one of the more important things is to become a resource and an outlet for players, or anybody for that matter, but whether it's the OHL or HDA, but we're going to speak OHL right now. What I think is important is that players are trying to make it to the next level, and that next level is likely in the NHL, and their mindset. And so many players face challenges because they're out of their homes for the first time. They're building. Yep. They're in environments that aren't very nurturing towards development. And while the coaching staffs and the general managers and the billet families try to do their very best, it's still a lot of work for a young person. And so when they're trying to make it to the next level, they don't really want to make any noise about problems they're challenged with, because they're afraid that it's going to ruin their chances to be drafted and be seen as a serious, they want to work on their game, and that's all they care about. Whatever else happens, just happens. And the problem with that is there's a mental toll that occurs, and they don't even realize the mental toll that it takes. It actually becomes performative. It can affect their performance long term, but ultimately it can affect their health, their full health. And that's the thing that we get concerned about, or that I've been concerned about talking with David Branch and the leadership at OHL, that we want to make sure mental health is the reasoning that's going to help players decide that they can reach out. So when it comes to issues like this, they think that if they talk to someone, it's going to go up the flagpole. And that's what I've been able to try to provide and say to them, that you can talk to me and I'm going to treat you as a person first, try to help you handle it as a man, young man, and decide who needs to know, what needs to know, so that you can make your best choices moving forward. If it's something that's way out of bounds, then naturally I'm going to help you get through that process so that you don't further victimize yourself or feel further victimized. So that's one thing that I'm trying to make sure, like in the short term, that the players and everyone knows what I'm able to offer, and that I'm a resource and an ally for them, an advocate, so to speak, that can help them deal with some of these, situations. Because let's face it, the worst thing in the world is for a coach or general manager, and certainly the league. I'm going to speak on behalf of the league briefly. I hope I can say this, but it's the worst thing in a few years after a player leaves the league and is playing professionally somewhere, that an incident finally happens within that point, and then they point back to an incident that happened in the Ontario Hockey League, and that no one in the league knew what happened. The coaching staff didn't have a chance to deal with it. The general manager didn't have a chance to deal with it. No one really knew. And it's not really fair in that sense, because we definitely want to say today's the day, this year's the year. We can say it happened in the past, but we know moving forward with Rico here that we're going to start to really make sure that that's our effort. And then long term, I would really want to help the teams. I want to be able to visit each team. Yeah. You know what I mean? So once I can cross, I never want to go to Canada so bad in my life. But anyways, I've been there many times, but just never in this sense, of course. But I want to be able to visit all 20 teams and visit their cities, though, not just their team, and get to know their towns and who are the under indexed, and where are some areas that the teams can fill in gaps. Where, like I try to express to players, talk to those folks within the organization that takes you out to read the kids and say, hey, where are the under indexed kids? I mean, I know you want to sell tickets over here to these kids, but where are the kids that we may be able to really influence and impact, say you can be like me, if you really work hard. So that's kind of long term, and hopefully COVID gets us back on the ice and I can meet some of the guys, but still it's very limited. I mean, I'm going to be on a mask.
Yeah. Hey, the way I loved the way that you put that, though, and wonderful answer, is you get to work with the players short term, and then you get to work with the players in a different capacity on a longer term goal.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's a great cyclical message going on in there. And I also know that hockey is a wonderful game. It provides a lot of opportunity to be involved. And Canada is a very multicultural place. It's Ontario specifically is incredibly diverse. So I know you've got a big responsibility on your shoulders with this role, but it also sounds like they've got a fantastic person for this job. And
thank you so much.
I'm very, very much looking forward to us returning to normal, but at the same time, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what new normal is. And I mean that not just on the ice, but what we mean as an off-ice product of hockey in general. So
hockey is loaded right up with potential right now because of people like you, Dan, who are thinking outside of the normal that's been ingrained within our souls about our sport. We play the sport because we love it, and we know that all people should have the same opportunity to love it and shouldn't have any barriers or blockades other than themselves. And we know that cost is involved, and I think that's some of the things that we'll work on a bigger picture, ways to get corporate sponsorship to lower costs so kids all across, because we know, like, Indigenous people in Canada are the most racialized and marginalized people in Canada. And so there needs to be more opportunities for all, including them and in every walk of life, to say, man, that's fun. I mean, I started as a trainer. I didn't know I was going to love hockey. There's no way you would have thought I'd know. But once you're there and you get the opportunity, man, Danny, I don't have to tell you and people listening right now to us how much we love this sport and how much it means to us. And it's just about getting so that instead of, I'm hoping in 20 years we don't have to have DEI people, because we'll be so inclusive that we don't need that job anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of philosophical ways I could say that too. And probably not any better than what you just said, though. It's kind of one of these positions that I think, though, even if we didn't need it because society was perfect, we would still want it to make sure that we are perfect. And there is no perfect, so therefore we always need it. And so I'm very grateful for what's in the road ahead, because I got to say, in 20 years time, I'm really looking forward to still, to being more involved than how I am in the last few. I'm trying to take an approach now where I've recognized that it's my turn to give back to hockey. I played it for very long, and my mind shift around how I can give back has changed. I recognize that it doesn't have to be me lacing up the skates with a whistle around my neck, coaching the next generation. I want to do that, but there's other ways that I can be involved. And sounds like you are too, because I know you do that. I know you're still on the ice when you can with your helmet, teaching those kids, while at the same time looking forward to traveling around Ontario. So, well,
and I think that's what it's about. It is bigger picture thinking, because while every one of those kids that I've helped, I say supported, getting to opportunities to play, they've had to take those challenges on themselves. And so that's what it's really all about for me. Like, understanding that this hockey thing is bigger than just we're going around with our sticks and hitting the puck. It's like there's a lot of challenges that just to play the sport, right? And so when we constantly overcoming them, it helps you I remember talking to a referee of a different sport. I wanted to tell you the sport, but he tried to compare my sport. I referee, I said, yeah, okay, I can run up and down the court. I guess I gave it away. I said, can you skate? And he looked at me like, I didn't think of that. So it is a special sport in that sense. And I look at the fact that Dan, you and I, we can offer much more than just the fact that these kids can learn how to skate. We know that there's more involved here. And there's people that are listening right now. How can I get involved? What can I do? And the first thing I can say is start to think broader in your mindset. So you'll figure out ways, whether it's a local community program or something bigger where you see a cause and you say, hey, I want to support that cause. And well, how can I step up and do it? And what's going to make the most sense for me and most impact? Because some people, they just want to do a little bit and say, I help. And some people want to be much more impactful. So there's so many ways, and you just have to look for them.
Yeah, well said. And just, I'd like to add by saying, try to put yourself in their, skates for a second and realize that what we've talked about too is there's a lot of barriers to stepping foot on that ice. But then even once you're at that level of getting the player involved, I know that you're working through training and situations to help deal with the objections that come with, okay, yeah, but now that they're good, how do we take them to the next level and still make it seem like it's an as accessible sport as it has been through their journey so far? And so that means that you can help donate equipment. You can look into helping your community with the operation costs of the season. You could look into ice time that goes into it. And then if you can't physically donate your money, you can donate your time. And then if you can't do either of those things, you can educate and talk to people. So that's just general advice, because I'm leaving it up to all of our listeners like you are to feel empowered to be involved in any way that they can, because you could design a t-shirt that raises money there. That's something completely off the ice that's still impactful in some way. So we'll leave it at that, because I love call to actions and feeling like everyone can be involved and inspired and included in this movement about inclusivity.
Dan, I couldn't have said it any better. You hit all three areas right on the head. If you're listening right now, and hopefully we've inspired you some, today's the day. Look forward to what you can do. You can make a change. You can help us transform the culture of hockey, one person at a time, and then collectively we'll do it.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me today. It's been my absolute pleasure. Rico, your time and your words are very impactful. I wish you nothing but the best and luck in the road ahead, in the skates ahead, and all that you'll be doing. And I also want to say that I'm very much looking forward to following up with you about what the OHL is announcing, what might be happening more diversity related in hockey, because we might be working on slightly different initiatives. They're both good. They're both important, and they both value checking in with each other, because I've gained a lot of value and inspiration just in talking to you. So I look forward to the next time that happens, or communicate with you just about the initiatives you're working on. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you too. I like it when like-minded people speak, but also I think we offer some different perspectives. You said some things that made me say, So I think you did well today too, Dan. It isn't just about what your guests are saying. You offer a lot to the podcast. So thanks again for that opportunity. And I'm sure we'll circle back at some point in time. I promise you.
Thanks.
All right, pal.